Welcome back to our 20th anniversary celebration. Joining us now, a journalist who's been on the scene for just about every one of the stories we've shown you tonight. From New York, Peter Jennings, the anchor and senior editor of ABC's World News Tonight. Long a supporter of international coverage, has CNN helped others in that regard, do you think, Peter, for more of a focus in other places?
Well, I have to tell you, first of all, congratulations from a member of the enemy forces.
Thank you.
I was early convinced that you'd make an enormous difference. I don't think we appreciated how much a difference CNN would make. I'm sitting here covering pages with notes and being reminded of things and events and trends and impact that you and the general globalization of the media have had. Tom Mintier, I think, said it well: the power of a single image will never be forgotten. I'm struck by how many images of Tiananmen Square I'd forgotten until I saw them again, but never the image of that guy standing in front of the tank, whether it was a still picture or a television picture, whether it was yours or whether it was ours. And watching Jimmy Carter tonight, because I was in Iran all during the revolution, I remember how tough the globalization of the media, led by CNN, has made diplomacy in the world today, because I used to get these calls in the middle of the night in downtown Tehran saying Jimmy Carter said X, and I'd rush up to the foreign minister's apartment in Tehran. He'd already have seen it on television in some devious way, and so the idea of having calm and contemplation in foreign policy went out the window with all of this globalization.
And Peter, unlike naysayers, is it true that, I know you were based in London, but you came to New York and saw CNN for the first time. You told executives at ABC that it would work?
I did indeed. I'd come on vacation to Florida, and I saw you on the air for the first time, and there were indeed a lot of naysayers, as you recall, a lot of people who just sort of gave you the back of the hand. And it may have had to do with the fact that I lived overseas. It was clear to me that you were going to make a difference. On the other hand, listening to Jimmy Carter tonight talk about the impact overseas, I think people at home should understand that having CNN in many parts of the world is a privilege, and very often the privilege of the elite. I've been in an awful lot of countries where the only place you could see CNN was in the foreign ministry or the hotels. And while that's changing, it has in some ways enabled, as I said, this elite to have this American, very largely American view of the world, but not everybody.
How about the whole changing news business? What has been the effect of this on you?
Well, you know, anytime Mike Chenoy's contract is up, we'd like to have him. and the reason for that is very simple. I think it doesn't matter where you plug in. If you don't have substance, if you don't have good reporters, if you only train a camera on something, I don't mean to imply that this is what you do. If you only train a camera on something without having the kind of context that a guy like Mike Chenoy gives you, then I don't think coverage of this continuous nature is always the most valuable thing in the world. But goodness knows, you can go anywhere in the world, from Bombay in the morning to Beirut in the afternoon, and plug in and show us what is happening. I think that makes it very difficult for your reporters. I think technology's made it very difficult for reporters in general, because it gives us less time to go and report the story. It gives us less time to gather the background that is important to contextual reporting. And so I think it's made us in the commercial networks, you know, ABC, NBC, CBS, it's made us look to what we think are our strengths, which is the value-added business of giving you, at this one and only time of the day, or two or only times of the day in our case, that we get some added value of context.
What's next? What about tomorrow? And, you know, I mean it in the sense of, say, the next 10 years. What changes are coming?
Well, you know, it's interesting. Magic Johnson reminds me a little bit. You know, he says that he went public in part because he wanted to educate people in the world. I take him at his word. But I think he also went public because those of us in the press, and those of you who do it all the time, were in some respects hounding him, almost forcing him to come out. And I think one of the dangers of having all this media all the time is that we do hound people in a way that we didn't do 20 or 30 years ago. So I think there's going to be more media all the time. I think the internet is going to transform our children's lives if it doesn't transform ours. And the hardest thing of all will be for you at CNN and us at ABC and people who have access to the internet to make sense of it all for ourselves and for everybody else.
And what might it do to privacy and personal lives?
Well, I think that's a little what I'm alluding to in the case of Magic Johnson. The truth of the matter is that the first really great reporting, the great responsible reporting about AIDS in America, was done on public broadcasting, on PBS, long before those of us in commercial television got as serious about it as we needed to be in the 80s. I think we finally got there. But But I think there's always the danger that when you train a camera, yours or ours for that matter, on something all the time, when Elian becomes such a centerpiece of our lives as it was again today, then I think we have to be very careful. It sounds a little pompous, I realize. We have to be very careful that we don't go over these lines.
We have less than a minute. You're so big, Disney. We're so big, Time Warner. Worry about that at all? Can it be too big?
Yeah, of course. Well, I think all of us should worry that the more media there is in the fewer hands, that raises the possibility, I emphasize the word possibility, the potential, that fewer people will have access, fewer people with as many opinions will have access to media. I have to say very quickly that in the case of Disney, I have not seen a shred of evidence in it in the time that they have owned ABC News. I'm relieved by that. I'm exhilarated by that. But it's always going to be an issue as long as more media is in fewer hands. Yes, I think as citizens we should worry.
Great talking with you. Thanks so much.
Nice to see you, Larry. Congratulations to all of you. You did a great job.
Thanks for celebrating with us. Peter Jennings, the anchor and senior editor of ABC's World News Tonight.